everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are talking about my best books of 2024. So we have actually a sort of small list today. I always feel like it takes me forever to go through my best books, my 5-star reads, and whittle it down. Like, I want to say the last couple of years I had like 15 or 20 that I wanted to talk about. I literally only had 10 5-star reads that weren't graphic novels, comics, or manga. Those will be in a separate video. So I only had 10 things, minus rereads, to sit down and make an order of, which sounds easier, and I do think, yeah, technically it was easier because I don't have anything that I was like, I had to kick off the list because otherwise this video is going to be way too long. I do still have things that I feel like could be moved around a little bit. I guess we'll talk about it when we get in there. But yeah, I only had 10 5-star reads that weren't comics, graphic novels, or manga. So when I say it that way, it does make the reading feel not as good. I didn't have as many good things. We'll get into like the stats and everything that I read in 2024 in a little while. Like, we're gonna go through all my best and worst for books and comics, graphic novels, and manga. But yeah, I have 10 things to talk about today. These are ones that I absolutely loved though, so don't get me wrong, these books are amazing. I just feel like I didn't have as many super amazing books this year as I've had in the past. So starting at number 10, because we are going to go from my least favorite to my like absolute favorite book of the year, I have Fantasy of Fire by Kelly St. Clair. This is the third book in the Tainted Accords series, and I've read books 1 and 2 in previous years, obviously. This is a series that is also on Kindle Unlimited, which is how I read it, which is why I don't have a physical copy here. And the first 2 books that I read, I want to say I gave 4.5 stars, but I think this third book, and the reason why it's only number 10 on this list, is the fact that it's the third book in a series where the first 2 books were only about 4.5 stars. I feel like it really came into its own as a fantasy romance. It's really bringing in the romance aspect more. It was a sort of slow burn in the first 2 books. But also books 1 and 2 have very different vibes. The main premise of this is that our main character is from this like fantasy world that is full of like fire. It rotates in a certain way where like when they get furthest away from a certain point, there's actual like fires everywhere, and so people have to keep constantly moving. Well, there's this like bridge sort of area to a different world that is full of ice, where it's the same sort of thing but like opposite because it has ice. So like when they get around to the furthest point from this bridge between the 2 worlds, it is like so cold people can't live there, so people are constantly moving. Well, she is this princess of the fire world, and after something horrible happens there, she gets kidnapped and taken to the ice world. But we realize that like what she knows about her world and the ice world are not really what is actually happening. So there are some like political tensions and things like that. But book 1 is very different tone-wise to book 2. We get to know basically a whole different aspect of these worlds, and it takes a very big turn. But in book 3, we have a little bit of a slow start, but then everything from both 2 first books comes together, and I just loved the tension that happened. I love the fact that we do have everything coming together and sort of growing, and the political tensions are happening. I loved the characters. Like I said, the romance comes into it a lot too, so I was really loving that. And it ends sort of open-ended because of the fact there is one more book in this series, but the main thing that happened in the book, like the maiden conflict, did have some sort of conclusion. So it's not a cliffhanger in the fact that events don't conclude. So I just really thought this was like really well done and brought the first 2 books together and made it even better, so I had to include it on this list. The next book, number 9, is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. So this was a book that I read for my 12 Books, 12 Friends, which means somebody actually recommended it to me. Besides somebody recommending it to me, I had actually not had this on my radar, really. It just didn't really seem like something I wanted. I think part of it is it was speculative, which is not bad. I do love that kind of stuff, but in a way that it's also historical fiction, where we have a character who is able to go from her present day time period, which I do think was in the 2020s, maybe like around our time period, to the past. And I was not not too sure I wanted to do that. So this is a book that I checked out from my library. I listened to it on audiobook. I loved the narrator for this, and I think that's what made me love this even more. Yes, the writing style was not necessarily something that I probably would have gravitated towards if I was just reading it by myself, and I don't think it would be something that would turn me off of the book completely, but because I was listening to it on audio, I really liked the way the narration happened with an audio narrator, and I really grew to love all of the characters. I did guess some of the plot twists and turns because there's a few of them in there, but I think it was in a way that like the author knows you're gonna get it before it's revealed. Like I felt like it was very obvious, but in a good foreshadowing type of way, and so I just really fell in love with this book. I do want to eventually own it for my shelves, and so yeah, sometimes you guys give me recommendations for things, and it turns out very, very well. Number 8 is the only series I'm going to talk about on this list, and it's because I read 4 books in the same series this year. 2 of them I gave 4 to 4.5 stars, and 2 of them I gave 5 stars, and so when I was ultimately looking through my list, 2 out of 4 were super, super high 5-star reads, and I just needed to talk about the whole thing. And for that, it's going to be the Wilderlore series by Amanda Foody. So I did read book 1, The Accidental Apprentice, and I gave this one 4 stars. Book 2 is The Weeping Tide. I gave this one 5 stars. Book 3 is The Everstorms, and this one I gave 4.5 stars. And then book 4 actually came out in 2024 as well. It's The Night Compass, and I gave this one another 5 stars. So book 2 and 4 were my favorite. This is a series I picked up because Ashley from Realm of Kid Lit Comics mentioned this in her favorite books of 2023. Actually, I think it was the first book in this series. And then I basically just devoured them throughout the year of 2024. I did listen to these on audio again as well, but I loved it so much I did pick up all of them for myself. The 5th book is not even coming out until the end of 2025, so I'm very, very sad about that because like I have absolutely been loving this series. This series follows a boy named Barkley, who in the first book I do believe is about 11 or 12, and he comes from this like village in the middle of the forest who do not like lore keepers. Lore keepers have these magical animals, magical powers, and his village is scared of these people. They're told not to go into the woods, not to talk to anybody, and he accidentally goes into the woods and gets bonded to this like wolf-like magical creature, and so he gets swept up into the world of the lore keepers, and the first book especially is just sort of setting all this up, which is probably why I gave it a 4 instead of like a higher rating. But throughout the 4 books that we've had so far, we have different adventures in different biomes that these different creatures live in. There is some sort of big overarching plot that's going on as well, but we do have a different plot per book that does get solved by the end of it, which I love. I love these sort of looks at found family and friends because those are very big aspects of these books, and I just love this whole like magical creature situation that we found ourselves in. I have had so much fun with these, and I don't know if you guys can like really tell, maybe if I do this, like book 1 to book 4, like look how chunky this last one was. It definitely took longer to read, but I don't mind because I've had so much fun in this world, in this series. And so, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. I think this is a really, really fun middle grade fantasy series, and I definitely want to continue, but I don't like the fact that I have to wait until later in 2025. My next favorite, number 7, is What I Mean When I Say I'm Autistic by Annie Kotowitz. So this is, I think, one of the only nonfictions I have ever mentioned in a favorites video. I don't read very many nonfictions. I did read more in 2024 than I probably have in the last few years, and I really loved the look at this one. This is an indie published nonfiction. This author, I guess, has done like online talking and like blogging and things like that about being an adult woman who was a late diagnosed autistic, and I think I really liked how this book takes her experiences but also relates them back to like very typical symptoms that people see with females who are autistic. I really liked how she put both of them together. There was a lot of talk about how this is how it presents for me, but not everybody's going to have that. And as someone who is a self-diagnosed autistic as well, I found a lot of myself in things that she was saying, especially with some of the things that she discovered later in life. I really just love the writing of it in the way that, like I said, she bridged the gap between here's a more clinical version, like here's what stimming is supposed to mean, but also brought it into this is how I stimmed, that kind of thing. Like, I just really thought it was well done and easy to read and easy to pick up, and I really liked this one. Moving into number 6, I have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I read this for my first plot twist vlog. The first one ever. I should have known that this was the book I was going to read based on the vibe and plot points they gave me on those cards, and I didn't, but I really enjoyed this one. If you are looking for cozy fantasy, I feel like this is one of the first books I ever heard with the term cozy fantasy. That's exactly what this is. We are following our main character of Viv, who used to be like a mercenary or a treasure hunter. I can't remember exactly which one. And she has decided to retire. She moves to this like town and wants to start a coffee shop. People in this town don't know what a coffee shop is because she experienced it out during her adventures. But so everything is basically just taking place in this barn that she is renovating to be a coffee shop. And it's really just a fantasy world, but bringing in cozy vibes of just like, we're gonna be here, we're gonna make coffee, we're gonna figure out our day-to-day life, we're gonna figure out the bakery. Like, it was just so good in that way. There's still a little bit of conflict, but like, it's not in the like life or death type of thing. I really loved our characters. This is sapphic, but I do want to emphasize this is not a fantasy romance. Like, when I say that it's sapphic, we do have characters that are women that like women, and they talk about maybe starting a relationship, but we do not have the overly romance vibes or the way that a romance would play out in here. It's just something that's part of the book. It's mentioned a couple times, but this is purely cozy fantasy. I know I've mentioned that and people are like, oh, I thought it was like fantasy romance, because that was a part that I remember as being like a selling point for this, is like, oh, and there's a sapphic romance, but it has a sapphic relationship sort of near the end, but it's not a romance. That did not take away from any of my enjoyment though. I really did wholeheartedly love this. I think I devoured it in only a couple of days. It was so quick and easy to read, and I just love the fact that it was a fantasy world, but very cozy vibes, low stakes. Loved it. Okay, we're moving into the top 5 now. We're halfway done. The next one I have here is Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. I gave Chloe Brown 5 out of 5 stars, whatever year I read that, and I think I want to say it was in my top books of the year I read it. Somehow this one blew that one out of the water. Like, I know it's been a couple years since I read the other one, but I absolutely love this. I think it's partly because of the tropes that are in it. We do have like the fake dating, friends to lovers, he falls first, all those things that I absolutely love. But I think it was also the characters. Like, Talia Hibbert's writing style is right up my alley. I think it's very easy to read. It's very like a typical sort of romance where we're getting to know the characters, and the characters are the thing that moves the plot forward. But I think the characters are really what sold it, and I really do think Saphir, the guy main love interest, is like one of my favorites, because like I said, it is a fake dating. They start dating because there is this like viral video that happened. He's like the security guard at her work. She works as like a student professor, something like that. I don't remember all the details. I just know how much I loved it. And he saves her from like a fire alarm or something like that. And it goes viral because he used to be a sports guy. He's retired now. He's doing other things. He's like a security guard, like I said. But because of this, in order to like help his business that he's currently doing on the side of being a security guard, she agrees to date him. They were already friends before, so we already have the very good friendship buildup, like the relationship. You really believe that these people were friends. But then we have the fake dating, and he is somebody that already fell for her, but he's never going to pressure her into anything. She thinks love is not for her and only wants to eventually get in his pants. But you can tell that like he has so much respect for her, and I'm usually not somebody that is liking romances where the characters are like, I'm gonna sleep with you first and then develop feelings, and that's basically what she thinks she wants, but the author obviously shows us that it's not. I just really liked how complex the characters were. I really loved them. I loved all the tropes. Everything about this was like so good. I still have not read Eve Brown, but now I definitely need to. Moving into book number 4, I have the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. This is one that, again, I absolutely loved. I loved Cemetery Boys the year it came out. That was actually my favorite book of the year that I read it, I think the year that it came out. And this one is so, so good as well. This is obviously a YA fantasy, but we have the magical trials, and they're very dangerous, and I love those kind of things as well. And I think one of my favorite things, again, is the fact that we do have sort of like a really good friendship element in here. We have a lot of people that want to do teamwork, and this is a whole world with Latinx gods. And these are all kids of certain gods that now have to go into a magical trial. They got picked to go, and a lot of these kids know they're going into these trials, and they've been preparing for it for so, so long. But our main boy, Teo, he has not prepared because he never thought he was going to get picked. So he is basically thrown into this situation, which is very like dramatic and dangerous and things like that. And I just absolutely loved him and the friends that he has, because like I said, there are some really good like found family friend vibes here. The end of this book was a complete like mind-blowing type of thing. I own the sequel slash finale. It's a duology. I need to read it, I haven't yet, because this, like, how did it end the way it ended? I don't know, but again, this is another one that I devoured so, so quickly because so much was happening and I loved every second of it. Okay, we're gonna get into number 3 and then we'll get into number 2. Obviously, that's how numbers work, but I do want to mention that I have gone back and forth with my second favorite and third favorite a lot. I read them both in the same month of 2024, and even at that point in time, I could not tell you which one was my favorite because they have completely different vibes. So they're basically tied up there for second place, but I sorted them just to have something sorted. And so for my number 3, I have The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is obviously a sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I don't feel like I read enough sci-fi, and this is one of those ones that I think encapsulates what I really, really like. It definitely feels sort of like a found family, reminds me a lot of like Firefly and Mass Effect, in the fact that we have all these different people from different races or different, you know, groups of people that come together to do their job. And yeah, their job is not necessarily like the best thing. They're supposed to be traveling to like another system to set things up. They do like almost like these little wormholes that help with like the time travel, space travel type of stuff. And so this book does feel very slow going. Not in a bad way. Like, I feel like this was very much a character driven story, which is one of my favorite things. So yes, it is a sci-fi, but it's very much found family and again, friends and relationships between people. I loved how everything had a purpose and really gave us depth to these characters. Because of all of that, the plot of them trying to go somewhere to place these like little wormhole things takes a back seat, but again, I did not mind because of how the characters were. They were at the forefront, and I just really loved reading about them. I loved how there was so much diversity in here. These are alien species that feel very unique to each other, and I really, really loved that. There were some very heart-wrenching parts of here as well, because you get to learn about these characters and love them throughout the story. I do have the rest of the series because this is the Pretty Illumicrate edition. I do need to read more. I really, really do, because I love this one so, so much. Moving on to number 2, like I said, this and The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet were pretty much neck and neck the entire year for me. But I'm gonna say my number 2 is Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. So this one is purely a contemporary romance, friends to lovers, which is like my absolute favorite. And I think that is one of the reasons that this is so, so high on this list for me, is because this is literally two people who are strangers who really develop a friendship first before any sort of romance happens. Like, I really, really loved the development of the characters. I loved the premise of this as well. It's very geeky romance, because the way that these two characters meet and start to become friends is they're in an MMORPG group. They are in this like guild together, and they mistake each other for different ages. So both of our characters are in their late 40s, I want to say, and our female character joins the group thinking that our male main character, who is the guild leader, is like an 18-year-old in college, because all she knows about it is that he goes to this college that somebody told her about. So she joins this guild thinking he's 18. All he knows about her when she joins the group is that she is a friend of his mother's who is about 80. So he thinks she's an octogenarian. So like literally, she thinks he's 18, he thinks she's 80, when they're realistically around the same age. And so they develop this really interesting and really fun friendship first, because obviously if you're 18, you're not going to date somebody 80, right? Like, they don't think about romance at all. But I loved the geekiness that was included in here. I loved how the friendship was 100% developed first before there was any sort of other romantic feelings. Like, I just loved these characters so much. We do have a little bit of like some drama stuff that happens throughout, but I loved the way that it was handled, and this is just like one of my favorite romances. It was so good, everything I could possibly want. I have to read more by Kathy Yardley. And then finally, my favorite book of 2024. I did not discover this until I read it in November going into December. So I don't even know if a lot of people know what I'm going to talk about here right now, but it is going to be Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. So this is a book that is actually an Illumicrate edition, came in January. I could have definitely read it as soon as I got it, but the UK edition came out around January. The US edition didn't come out until, I want to say, October, something like that, because I really wanted to listen to this on audio. Nathan Fode, who was in Our Flag Means Death, did the audiobook of this. He was the narrator, and let me tell you, he needs to do more audios. I absolutely fucking love this book. He did the best job, and like, yes, I probably could have read this by myself and really enjoyed it, but his delivery of being Ganymedes, our main character in here, it was so good. Not only that, obviously he did the narration for the entire book. He did all the characters, but like, he was Ganymedes. This book is billed as an Agatha Christie mystery in a fantasy setting, and let me tell you, it is literally a fantasy setting, but it is a murder mystery. People keep dying. It was a like, what is going on type of thing. Another like mind-blowing type of book. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, basically we have these like 12, I think they call it duxes, that are on this ship. They are on this massive ship. There's fantasy magic that, you know, keeps it going as you go through, obviously. But they're on this trip that is supposed to like take them and their magical powers, and like after they're done with this trip, they get to become the rulers of their lands in this like big continent. The problem with this is that Ganymedes does not have magic. He is hiding it from everybody else that he doesn't have magic. So he is supposed to be the next ruler of his land, but he never received his magic. He just doesn't have it. So he not only doesn't have magic, but then somebody dies, somebody is murdered on their ship, and he's trying to figure out who did it and hide the fact that he doesn't have the magic that people think he should have. And so there's a lot of like good character work again that go on in here. The dialogue is very funny. So again, I don't know if I'll ever be able to reread this without listening to Nathan Fode do it, because again, it was so phenomenal. I absolutely love this. I love the characters. I loved how everything played out. However, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much as I did if I didn't have Nathan Fode doing the narration. So I know that there is always a big thing near the end of the year where people are like, audiobooks aren't reading, but like, not only is that ableist, and yeah, definitely audiobooks are reading, but my favorite book of the year is my favorite book of the year even more. Like, I can't tell you, I can't even begin to think about like, what if I didn't listen to it on audiobook? I do think it probably still would have been 5 stars. There were so many good mind-blowing things in here, things that I absolutely loved, but would it have been my favorite book of the year? I don't know. I have no idea, because I have never read it without Nathan Fode. But like, that audiobook, that delivery, that character that he made by just doing all the dialogue and everything, I absolutely fucking loved it. Like, this is my favorite book of the year, and part of it is because I listened to it on audio. The audiobook was phenomenal. So, yeah. First of all, great book. Love the characters. It was so in-depth. I loved the fantasy aspect, everything like that. But it is very much a murder mystery. Lots of people die, lots of blood and gore. But the audiobook, so good. Like, that is what made it for me. And so that is it. Like I said, I only had 10, I guess 11, but I put the Wilderlore books together, obviously. 5-star reads that weren't rereads for me this year. Again, I feel like in years in the past, I've had more 5-star reads. So like my actual reading quantity didn't have a ton of 5 stars. However, the 5 stars that I had, I absolutely loved. And so yeah, let me know if you've read any of my favorite books this year. What did you think? And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So I will see you then. Bye.